Continuing along with our ongoing series of classes, we are currently studying the Encyclopedia Talmudit, the Talmudical Encyclopedia. And this is found in volume 5, Hey. And the section that we're doing, the entry is Goy. We've been doing this for many classes now, and there are many, many subdivisions in this entry of Goy. We are now around the middle of it. And the topic that I believe we're up to right now is tumah taharah, with regards to being contaminated with an impurity and purity, clean, spiritually clean. So that would be on page Shin Chaf Beis 322. And as mentioned before in a previous class, here when we say pages, each column is a separate page. So there's really 4 pages, if you will, on one sheet. There's column A and B, and then column A and B. That's how they're numbered. So we're in Shin Chaf Beis, second paragraph, tumah taharah, with regards to impurities and purities. Hagoy ein lo tumah lihitameh ba. The goy does not have the concept of impurity to be able to become defiled or impure. It doesn't exist by the non-Jew. B'tumas meis, when it comes to the impurity of that which is the most intense, and that would be the impurity of a corpse, of a dead body. If one comes in contact, if a Jew comes in contact with a dead body, so the Jew becomes defiled, becomes tameh. So, tumas meis einay metameh. He, the non-Jew, does not transmit impurity. Shene'emar, for the verse states, V'ish asher yitma v'lo yischata. And a man that will become impure and will not have the sprinkling on him. Meaning to say the process of the way that the Jew becomes purified from this intense state of impurity, of coming in contact in any one of certain ways with a dead body. So the Jew needs to have the sprinkling of a particular mixture of the water and the ashes of the parah aduma, the red cow, called the red heifer. That particular type of a mixture then needs to be sprinkled on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, and only after this whole process, which is described in the book of Bamidbar in Parshas Chukas, in Numbers chapter 19. And there it says, there's a verse that says that the man that will become defiled, become impure, and will not have this sprinkling. So from there we learn out, Kol sheyesh lo taharah yesh lo tumah, v'chol she'ein lo taharah ein lo tumah. Anyone who has and can be associated with becoming purified, that type of a person can become unclean, can become tameh. And one who cannot become purified, one who cannot become clean, cannot become unclean. The goy ein lo taharah mitumas meis. And a goy cannot become purified from the impurity of a dead body. Loi bahazah, not through the sprinkling of this mixture. Shene'emar, and how do we know to exclude the non-Jew, that you cannot sprinkle on him this mixture, and if you do, it does nothing for him? Because the verse states, V'hoisa la'adas b'nei Yisrael l'mishmeres l'mei nida. And it shall be for the congregation of the children of Israel, i.e., the Jews, as a safekeeping for these waters of sprinkling. V'loi lagoyim, and not for the non-Jews. So from that verse, we clearly derive that the non-Jew cannot become purified with the sprinkling of the water. V'loi b'mikveh. And furthermore, the non-Jew cannot become purified through immersing in the ritualarium, the mikveh, which is a special type of a body of water, which generally purifies a Jew from a state of being impure to becoming pure. Mikveh doesn't always work, but in general, that's what's necessary, or that's part of the process, if not the entire process. How do we know to exclude the non-Jew, the goy, that the mikveh does not do anything for him? Because immersing in a mikveh is compared to the sprinkling of the water and ashes of the red heifer. Shenemar, for there is a verse which states, V'chit oi b'yem hashvi v'goymer, and he shall sprinkle, this is done by the kohen, by the priest, he shall sprinkle on the man who became defiled on the seventh day. This is the second time he's sprinkling on him. And then, v'rachatz b'mayim v'toher, and he shall bathe himself in the water, which is referring to immersing in a kosher mikvah, v'toher, and then he becomes pure. So in other words, the mikvah only works for someone that the sprinkling works for. And since when it comes to the sprinkling of that blood, of the water and the ashes mixed together, that sprinkling, it says clearly only for the Jews. Therefore, when it comes to immersing in the mikvah, it's only for the Jews. Lefichach, therefore, goy shenoga, a non-Jew that touched, oy nosa, or carried, oy heil, or covered over al hames, over the dead body. You see, those are the ways that a Jew would become defiled. Either by touching the dead body, so that makes the Jew now become tameh, impure, or by carrying the dead body, even if he did not come in actual physical contact with it. For example, it's a funeral procession, and the dead body is in a coffin, in a box, and a Jew is carrying that. Or if the Jew in any way hovers over the dead body, even from a distance, but if he takes his hand and just goes over the dead body, or for that matter, anything, all of those would make the Jew tameh, impure. But if a non-Jew did any of that, and came in contact in such a way with the dead body, it's as if he never touched him. He never came in contact. It's irrelevant. So the goy does not become tameh, does not become impure. Goy sheyoshav b'chaloin shel bayis shameis b'soichoy. A non-Jew that was sitting in a window of a house in which there is a corpse in the house. B'oifen, in such a manner, she'eino yochel leilech misham, that he cannot leave that location. Kegoin, for example, shu kafus mechavushe malchus, she'ein acher yochel hatiroi, that he is imprisoned, he is taken as a captive from the government, that they put him there, and no one else can come and release him. So then that guy serves to minimize the window from its necessary required amount, which we'll explain in a moment. And that guy actually serves to be a separation so that the impurity will not be able to go out further. Okay, because he's not mekabel tumah. Okay, this really gets quite detailed. Let me try to keep it brief and simple. The laws of purity and impurity for the Jew, according to the Torah, nothing to do with the Goy, are extremely detailed and very complicated. So I'm going to try to keep it simple, and we're going to see how it is relevant for the Goy, or what purpose the Goy can serve here. One of the many laws of tumah v'taharah are as follows. In order for the corpse, the dead body, to transmit the state of impurity to someone, if the person is found in the same Oihel, in the same room, under the same roof, under the same covering as the dead body, then that person becomes defiled. That Jew would become tumah. Now, if they're in the same room and there's no separation between them, no matter how big the room is, it could be a huge auditorium, a mile long, and the dead body is at one end and the Jew's at the other end. He can't even see him. Doesn't matter. They're both under the same covering. The tumah was transmitted. All right. Well, what about in the same house but in two different rooms? What about if there's a morgue in the basement of the hospital and the Jew is on the 10th floor in the hospital? So in that last case, in all probability, the Jew will not become tumah. And here's how it works. Let's go back to the example of the house. If there is a dead body in one room and the door is closed, then the tumah, the impurity, remains in that room and does not extend, does not go anywhere else. The moment you open the door a certain amount, then the impurity leaks out until you close the door again. So if there is someone in the house and that door was opened for a second and there was no other separation between them, then the tumah does reach that other Jew, becomes impure. However, let's make up a theoretical case. There's a dead body in a room, and then the door is closed, and someone walks into the house. As long as the door is closed, that person is safe from becoming impure. Then the person walks out of the house. Then they open up the door of the room where the dead body is in, and then they close the door, and then the person walks back in. He's still pure. He still has not been defiled, because it needs to be that he's under the same roof without any separation. And if there's more than one doors that lead to that, so then they all have to be opened at the very same instant in order for the tumah to be transmitted. So if, let's say, there's a hospital and there's the morgue. So first of all, unless the door to the morgue and the door to the refrigerator where the dead body is presumably kept, they have to both be open at the same time in order for the impurity to get out. But then there has to be, all the way to the 10th floor, where the person that we're talking about is found, all the doors have to be open for a second. And the likelihood of that is very, very unlikely. So therefore, he would not become defiled. So now, after having said all that, if you have a window in between one room and the next room, or between one part of the house and the other, so the window, meaning a hole in the wall, is what we're talking about. If the window is closed, if the window is shut, then the tumah does not get out. And no matter, it could even be glass. We're not talking about something visible. It doesn't make a difference. A person can see the dead body through the closed window. He does not become impure. So if the window is open, that particular amount, so then the tumah will go out of the room and it will contaminate whatever is in the next room. Now, what happens if you put something in the window to stuff up the window? So then, if you put something which cannot receive, is not susceptible to becoming impure, that then will serve the purpose of being considered a stopper, and it will be closing that window. So therefore, it doesn't have to be airtight as long as there isn't this small amount that would let the tumah out. So now here's the question. A non-Jew is sitting in the window. So if he is a regular person and he could just come and go freely as he wants, then he won't serve the purpose of blocking the impurity from going out. However, if he's there and he cannot leave, such as he's imprisoned and he has no choice, so he can't really go anywhere, then he would serve the purpose of blocking that window, and because he's sitting in that open area in the wall, that so-called window, the tumah will not go out. Whereas if a Jew were to be sitting there, even if he was a prisoner and he couldn't go anywhere, he would not be able to block the tumah, because the Jew becomes tameh. So if you're putting any item, if you put any type of an item that can become tameh, can become impure, that wouldn't serve the purpose of blocking the impurity. But if you put an item which does not become impure, so then it could serve the purpose. Basically, anything which was made into a vessel can become impure. So if you put a pot, a pan, a chair, a bench, anything like that, that would not block the impurity from going further, even though it's physically closing the window. However, if you put something which cannot receive impurity, such as you just took a bundle of straw or something like that, which wasn't made into anything, and you stuffed the window, that would. So the Jew is considered like something which is susceptible to become impure, and therefore he would not be considered blocking the impurity. But the non-Jew, as long as he's stuck there and he can't go anywhere else, since he can't become impure, he would serve the purpose of being able to block the impurity from going further. All right. Next. It is not only in this most intense and severe impurity of the corpse that the non-Jew cannot become defiled, but also in all types of impurity. The non-Jew does not become defiled from them. There's no such thing as a goy becoming tamei. We're on page Shin Chaf Gimel, 323. Tumah hayoytze megufoy ein loy. Also, the impurities which come out of the person's body, an omission which comes out of the body, which certain types of omissions can make the person who had that discharge become impure, by the goy that doesn't exist. Furthermore, the non-Jews, the goyim, do not become impure, biblically speaking, from a certain type of a discharge called ziva. Ziva is a certain type of an irregular, it's an abnormal type of seminal discharge. To differentiate between that and a regular discharge of semen, so this is called ziva. It's a different type, and physically, actually, there is a difference between the way that the semen looks. And if the person had a discharge of ziva, so if it's a Jew, that would make him impure. If the goy had the exact same type of a physical discharge, it would not make him impure. Shenemar, because the verse that speaks about this type of impurity states clearly, Dabru el b'nei Yisrael v'goymer, speak unto the children of Israel, Ish ki yeh zav, any man that will be in this state of zav, of this type of a discharge. And from that verse we clearly learn out, B'nei Yisrael mitmayim beziva v'lo hagoyim, that it is only, exclusively, the Jewish people that can become impure with this type of ziva discharge, and not the goyim. V'chein eina mitmayim benidus. Likewise, they cannot become tamei with the impurity of nida. Nida is basically when a woman or girl has her bleeding of her menstrual period. That does not apply to goyim. So if a non-Jewish woman or girl bleeds and has her discharge, her menstrual period, that blood does not make her impure, unlike the Jew. Av tumas leida in lahem. Furthermore, they don't have the impurity of childbirth. When a Jewish woman gives birth, she then became impure. Does not apply to the non-Jews. When a non-Jewish woman gives birth, she's in the same state as she was beforehand. She does not become tumah. Shenemar, for the verse states clearly when it speaks about childbirth, Taber el b'nei Yisrael, speak unto the children of Israel, Isha ki sazriya v'gomer, that if a woman is to give seed, and in other words, she's to conceive and then give birth. B'nei Yisrael mitmayim v'lo yagoyim. So from that verse, since it says clearly, speak unto the children of Israel, again, the Jewish people become impure through childbirth and not the goyim. Af le'inyan isurei bia. Furthermore, when it comes to the prohibition of having intimate relations, Ein Yisrael haba alein chayav midin teira mishum nida oizava oyeledes. Now, a Jew, let's say a Jewish man, who is forbidden to have any type of marital relations with a non-Jewish woman under any circumstances. However, if a Jewish man has relations with a non-Jewish woman, with a goya, he does not become impurified. It's not considered that he had relations with a nida, with a woman who is impure because she had her menstrual period, or a zava, which is the woman that has a specific type of a different type of a discharge, which by Jewish women would make her impure, or a ledes, or a woman that gave birth. See, by a Jewish woman, all of those women are tameh, are impure, and it's forbidden for any Jewish man to have relations with them, even with one's own wife, until she fixes that situation and she purifies herself. But that state of impurity will remain even after, there's no amount of time. It's even after, let's say, the bleeding stops and she's no longer having her period. Doesn't matter. She's still in that state of impurity. Or after she gave birth, even 10 years after she gave birth. Doesn't matter. She's a woman who gave birth until she purifies herself. That does not apply to non-Jews, and therefore, if a Jewish man had relations with a non-Jewish woman, there's no such thing as nida, ziva, or yeledes. V'chein, and likewise, and that's why, by the way, see in all those cases, the way that the Jewish woman becomes pure and she gets out of her state of being impure, being tameh, is by properly going to the mikveh. By a non-Jewish woman, the whole thing is absolutely a non-entity, a non-issue, and the mikveh does not help or harm her, and there is absolutely no point. So parenthetically, for Bnei Noyach that are looking to do some additional mitzvahs, they want to keep some of the Jewish commandments and rituals, and then there is the whole discussion, what can they do, what should they do, what can't they do, what shouldn't they do. So my understanding is that anything that is related to tumah, taharah, is something which is absolutely pointless, and therefore, for a non-Jewish woman to go to mikveh is ridiculous. It does nothing. It doesn't make them any more spiritual or holy or pure. They didn't become impure, and they don't become purified by that. So it's a non-entity. And likewise, the non-Jew does not become impure with the impurity known as keri. That would be, for a male, that would be the regular seminal discharge, the regular sperm not as opposed to the zav, which is an irregular one, or it's a type of a sickness. Shenamar, because again, when it speaks about this type of a seminal discharge, the verse states clearly, Ki yevecha ish, when there'll be amongst you a man, asher lo yihye tahar, which will not be pure, he'll be impure. Mikre laila, something which happens at night. And even though it says it happens at night, but the sages explain, and Rashi, the main commentator, brings down on that verse that this is one of the places where the Torah is just speaking in the present tense common situation. So to say, it's just giving you the classical case of how it is. But there's no difference, even happens during the day. It's same ruling, same impurity. It's just one of those things that generally this is how it happens, so therefore the Torah says it in such a way. At any rate, it says, if there'll be amongst you, the amru, and our sages derived from that word, bicha, amongst you, v'loi ba'cherim, and not with others, meaning Jews and not non-Jews. The shichvas zare shel goy tahira miklum, and the semen that came out of the body of the non-Jew, that sperm is pure. It's not impure. It's not like the Jews. It is not, there's no laws of impurity there. Therefore, Bas Yisrael, Shepalta Shichvas Zare Shel Goy, Tehera. A Jewish girl or woman that had a type of an omission of sperm from a non-Jew, meaning she had intercourse, she had relations with a non-Jewish male, and then her body discharged some of that semen. So if it were to be from a Jew, that would make her now be in a state of impurity as just like a man who has that discharge. So normally the seminal omission is a male issue, but it could be a female issue, because if they had relations and then after that later she had that discharge, that would make her considered also a balkeri, someone who had that seminal discharge. So if a Jewish woman or girl had relations with a non-Jew and then her body had the discharge of his semen, she is not impure. Even if it is within 3 consecutive days, because we have a rule, without getting into all the details, but the first 3 days are much more crucial and much more intense as far as the semen inside the woman that was discharged from the man, as far as being able to conceive. In other words, after 3 days, so the semen, if it didn't, I don't know if the word is overlaid, but if it didn't make that connection with the woman's egg up to 72 hours, according to the Torah, it could still fertilize and it could still be conceived. After that, it's considered. So even if within the first 3 days after they had the relations, she had this omission, she still does not become impure. Furthermore, there's a type of impurity called tzara'as. And I don't think there's any correct way to translate that, because it was not a natural phenomena. It is commonly mistranslated in your English translations of the Chumash, of the Bible, as leprosy. It's like leprosy. It has many common, things to it. It's a certain skin disease, a skin disorder. That's what tzara'as is. And in general, not always, but in general, it's a punishment for the person to get the tsaras. And the tsaras has many, many specific details. It depends on what shade of white it is, what the color is. And it has to be determined or has to be declared by the kohen, by the priest, as to whether it's tumah or not, whether it's impure or not. Only applies to the Jew. A non-Jew that gets the identical type of a skin disease, and it's a miraculous, abnormal, supernatural type of a skin disease. It's exactly identical to the Jews. This Jew is tumah, and that non-Jew who has the exact same thing is not. Loi benige batim, and also, tsaras can be on one's skin, as we said. It can be on one's garment, or it can be on one's house, on the walls of his house. And then the house becomes impure, and as it speaks about in the Chumash, what to do, and at times they would have to knock down that wall or what have you. At any rate, none of that applies to a non-Jew. So if a non-Jew, if the wall of his house gets tsaras, it's not tsaras, just put some plaster over it or whatever, even though it's a miracle. And how could that be? It's irrelevant. It did not become impure. Shenemar, because the verse states, Beveis eretz achu zaschem, that when the Torah speaks about the tsaras of the house, it says, in the house in the land of your inheritance, v'lo achu zas akum, and not the inheritance of non-Jews. So it doesn't apply to them. V'lo benige begodim, and likewise, it doesn't apply to the tsaras of the clothes. V'lo benige gufam, and not to the tsaras of their body, of their skin. Shehukshu nige begodim v'nige aguf l'nige batim, because the Torah makes a comparison. It puts together the affliction of the garment and the affliction of the body to that of the houses. Shenemar zois ha-Torah l'chol negat tsaras. This is the law for all of the types of afflictions of tsaras. V'laneslik, v'latsaras abeged v'labois. So it puts them all together, whether it's the garment or the house. And since when it came to the one of the house, it said clearly, achuz aschem, your inheritance, and excluded the non-Jew. So from the fact that we have another verse that bunches together all types of tsaras, whether it's the body or the garments or the house, so we know that it applies to all of them. Hukshu kulam zelazeh, they're all juxtaposed. The yeshoim and some say shnige gufam nisma'atu, that the tsaras of the body is the goyim are excluded me'akasu from a specific verse, from a different verse. We don't have to bunch it together because it says Adam ki avor b'sar v'goymer, that Adam, a man, that if on the skin of his flesh there will be this type of affliction, ve'enu misoilim krim Adam, and the nations of the world, the non-Jews, are not called Adam. They're called Ha'adam. So when the verse says Adam, that's clearly speaking about the Jew. So basically, so far, we've excluded the goyim from any type of impurity, any type of tumah. None of it applies. Midivrei soifrim, rabbinically speaking, Tmeim hagoyim kezavim l'chol divreihem. The non-Jews are in a state of impurity like a zav, like one who had this abnormal omission, which, if it happened to a Jew, makes him impure. That's the status and that's the state, rabbinically speaking, that all non-Jews have. So on the one hand, rabbinically speaking, yeah. So on the one hand, biblically speaking, there's no such thing as a goy becoming tamei. However, the rabbis instituted that all goyim should be considered for all rabbinic purposes, like a person who's in a state of zav. Shechachim gazru, for the sages decreed, al kol hagoyim hazcharim v'anakevos, on all non-Jewish people, male and female, Bein ra'u, bein loy ra'u, whether they actually saw ever an omission or not, linyan tumah v'tara, when it comes to laws of purity and impurity. So even if they physically never had that discharge, doesn't matter, not Jewish, the Chachamim said they are to be considered like a Zav. Kidei, and the reason why they made up this decree, it's made up rabbinically. Why they decree this? So that a Jewish child should not be found or accustomed or comfortable by a non-Jew for purposes of homosexual activity. They were afraid of that, and therefore they made a decree to keep away. So they're making this specific type of a distance, that we will have this distance from the goy, and because they were afraid that the goy then, if he had free access, if we would say, oh, they're not tumah, so there's no problem, so therefore they said, treat every goy like he or she are tumah. And that would be a protection for the Jewish children. This is one of the 18 things which, historically speaking, the two different schools which lived at the same time and argued on many, many cases throughout the whole Talmud. That's the school of the sage Hillel and the school of the sage Shammai. They always argued. There are 18 things that they together decreed. One of those 18 things is that all goyim are to be considered tamei, as zav. V'yesh shenistapku loymar. Now there are those that are doubting. They're considering to say. They said perhaps shegzeira zu ha'isa kvar b'mei hachashmonaim, that it's possible that this decree was already made and existed back in the days of the Chashmonaim, the Hanukkah story, which takes us to the middle of the Second Temple. That then already they made this decree. Hainu, meaning shegazru az, that they then decreed al goy haroye ziva, not any and every goy, but a goy that actually sees this type of a discharge. He has this type of abnormal seminal discharge. Sheyitame ki Yisrael, that even though biblically it means nothing, he's not tamei, but they said he should be considered tamei like a Jew who had that discharge. Vishuv b'shmoi nasr davar gazu sheyeh kizav afilu k'sheinei roya. So then, what did Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai decree? They came later. If this decree existed from the times of the Chashmonaim, the difference is, according to one opinion, the Chashmonaim period of time, what the sages then decreed was that if and when a non-Jew has that physical discharge, he should be considered impure like a Jew who had that discharge. Came along Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai generations later, and they extended that, and they said, no, any and every Jew should always be considered in that state of impurity as if they had that discharge, even though they didn't. So it's an extension. Vein chayav mal tumah zu mishum tumas mikdash v'kadoshim. Lefi she'ein hatumah elo midivreihem. Now, they're not obligated, they're not liable, I should say, for this type of an impurity by entering, for example, the Beis HaMikdash, the temple area, or eating any of the holy foods, which normally a person who's tamei is punished and is transgressing. No, they're not considered transgressors because this impurity is only rabbinic. And the rabbis made them impure only for certain reasons, like we said. So therefore, they're not really impure, biblically speaking. So therefore, if they break the rules, that for a Jew who's truly in that state of impurity, he'd be transgressing and he'd be punished. Whereas the non-Jew is not. Because he's not really impure. So if, let's say, there's an area in the temple where anyone who's a zav can't go there. Huh? So he can't go there. So the guy, even though he's considered to be a zav, he who went there is not considered that it's an impure person who went there. Now, some more details about this. Now, this decree they made is not from infancy. It's not the moment that the guy is born. So for the boy, for the male, it's from age 9 full years and up, from his 9th birthday and on. And for the female, for the girl, from age 3, from her 3rd birthday and on. That's when they're considered to be a zav, rabbinically. But those that are younger than this age, a boy under 9 and a girl under 3, they did not decree upon them this type of impurity. And that is because, according to the taharah, their relations, their physical, intimate, sexual relations, is not considered a relation. In other words, it doesn't count. So if a boy under 9 had intercourse, it means nothing. It doesn't count. And the same thing, a girl under 3, it doesn't count, even though the physical act may have been done. And the primary reason for why the sages made this decree that they should be considered impure, every non-Jew, male from age 9 and female from age 3, is because of what we said before, because we don't want the Jewish children to get lured or seduced or abused and have relations with them. So it's a protection. Okay, well then they only have to make that protection once the child reaches the age of being able to have intercourse. That would be boy from 9, girl from 3. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Omar, in the Talmud, the Talmudic sage, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, "Shegozru al b'nei seyim shiu tmeyos me'arisasan kenida," that the rabbis actually made a decree that the non-Jewish girls should be impure like a nida, which is basically the woman who had her menstrual period from the day she's born. They said for the non-Jewish girl, even though the whole thing doesn't apply, and biblically she's not tummy, even after she really does have that bleeding, but they decreed that from the day of birth, from when she's in her carriage, in her crib, she should already be considered like a nida. Vein halacha kemoisoi. However, the halachic ruling, the law is not like that opinion of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. We do not follow that opinion. V'dafka b'stam goy, hu shaloi gozra laktanim. Now, it's specifically only by a regular non-Jew that the sages did not declare and make this decree under age 9 or 3, that they're impure. Avoli in ira loy tumas ziva lekatan, oy tumas nida v'ziva lektana. But if it did happen that physically the boy had this ziva discharge, or the girl had this nida or ziva discharge, even though they're underage, even if it is an infant of the day they're born, they become rabbinically impure. So that which we said, it only starts from age 9 or 3, is talking about because in a normal case, a child at that young age doesn't have any of those discharges. So we said, nonetheless, from age 9, he's considered impure. From age 3, she's considered impure. But if they actually did have some kind of a discharge even before that age, then there's no age limitation, and even from the day they're born, they would be considered rabbinically impure. Mikivon shein tumas hagoyim kizovim elo medivrei seifrim. Being that, as we said, this state of impurity that the non-Jews have is a decree. It's all rabbinic. That they're considered like a zav. Yesh dvarim shekilu bohem v'legazer aleim. Therefore, there are certain things, certain areas where the sages were lenient and they did not make the decree. Because after all, they're really not tamei. There's no such thing as becoming impure for a non-Jew. So the rabbis made the decree. Okay, well, if they're making the decree, they can make the rules of the game. And they, to begin with, made all sorts of exceptions because they're making the decree, and they made the rules when it does and when it does not apply. Le'inyan bias mikdash. So, like we mentioned earlier, as far as entering the area of the temple, the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, she'af al pi shazav osru likonis b'harabayis, even though it is forbidden for a zav to enter the Temple Mount, a Jewish person who had this type of a discharge cannot go onto the Temple Mount until he purifies himself by going to the mikveh. Hagoyim lo yosum linyan zeh kezavim. But when it comes to the goyim, so the chachomim, the rabbis, did not make them considered like this type of impurity, even though we said in general they all are. Ela kitmei meisim. But rather here, they altered the type of a tumah. They said they're not a zav. They said it's as if they touched a dead body, that type of a tumah. And therefore, they're not forbidden to enter the Temple Mount, but they're only forbidden to enter from a certain point. There was a small little fence that went all around the outer part of the temple area itself. But that was very close to the temple itself, whereas the Har HaBayis is the whole area that's within this huge wall of the top of the mountain. That's called the Temple Mount. So someone who is Tamei Lemeis, someone who came in contact with a dead body, is permitted to come onto the Har HaBayis. They're just not allowed to go within the Chel. So the Goyim, they said, even though normally we consider them to be a Zav, and someone who's a Zav cannot go onto the Temple Mount, yet the Goyim are allowed to go onto the Temple Mount. They cannot go beyond the Chel, though. They can't pass that little fence. Le'inyan isur achila bekochim kishe yiskayru. As far as the prohibition of eating sacrificial food, part of a sacrifice, when they convert. She'ilu asum kezavim linyan zeh, because if they would have been considered like a zav, which is normally what they are considered, then they would never be able to eat their paschal offering, because they're lacking their atonement of their sacrifice to atone for. But they can't bring that atonement, because biblically speaking, they never became tummy when they were non-Jews. In other words, it would be, I guess the term would be a catch-22. See, a zav can only become purified not only by going to mikveh, that would work for some people, for certain types of tumah, but for a zav, he also has to bring a carbon, a sacrifice. A zav or a zava, man or woman, they'd have to, in addition to going to mikveh, they have to bring a certain sacrifice. And until then, once they go to mikveh, they're no longer impure. They're pure, they're tahar, but they're called mechusre kapara. They're lacking their atonement. And therefore, in that state, they wouldn't be allowed to eat karbanis. So now, it comes out to be like this. Any ger, any convert, a guy who became Jewish, would never be able to eat his own paschal offering after he converted. Why? Because if he was considered to be a zav when he was not Jewish. So how does every zav needs to bring the sacrifice to allow him to finish the process and get out of this state of zivus? Now he can't bring that sacrifice because, biblically speaking, he was not a zav. He really wasn't a zav. It was only a decree that the rabbis made. So he could never bring that offering, which means that he never can get out of that state of being a zav. Even though he became Jewish now, and you would assume, well, the whole thing falls away. Well, this man, true, he's now Jewish, and he went through the process of becoming Jewish, and he went to mikveh, and he brought a sacrifice to make it that a convert brings, but he didn't bring the sacrifice that a zav needs to bring after he became out of the state of zav, after he became pure. So if he didn't bring that sacrifice, he'd never be able to eat any sacrificial food. And he said, okay, well then fine. So the converts can't eat any sacrifices. But Pesach, every Jew has to eat the Paschal offering. He wouldn't be able to. Therefore, they didn't make the decree. They said clearly that it does not apply to the convert. Even though while he's a goy, he's a zav, but as soon as he becomes Jewish, he does not need to bring his sacrifice. So they made the rules, so they can make the rules as they chose. Now what about burning holy food that if it was touched by them? So again, as far as the Jewish law is concerned, nothing to do with Goyim. A Jew that came in contact with holy food, fine. And if he's not supposed to eat it because he's not a kohen, that's fine. But if the Jew is tameh, he's impure, and he touched the food, he contaminated the food, he made it tameh. Now no one can eat it. It's holy food, but it's tameh. So the Jewish law is that food needs to be burned. It's holy, you can't just trash it, but you can't eat it. It has to be burned. So, what happens if a guy who, rabbinically speaking, is tameh, he's zav, and he touched this holy food? Yesh soivrim, there are those that hold that although indeed it's true that this impurity is only rabbinic, we still burn truma v'kachim. You see, again, and that's very severe because it's forbidden to burn truma and kachim, holy food, if you don't have to burn it. If it didn't become impure, you're not allowed to burn it. So it's like, can't just say, well, let's play it safe and let's just burn it. No, it's either or. Either you need to burn it or you're not allowed to burn it. So some say that if a guy touched it, we do burn it. However, in the Babylonian Talmud, which is what we follow, there it states without any dispute that you do not burn this holy food if a non-Jew touched it. Because again, they're not really impure. So therefore we have no right to burn the truma and the kachim food. V'chein halacha, and indeed that is the halachic ruling, that is the law, that if a guy touched truma v'kachim, unlike a Jew that was tamei that touched it, because the guy is really not tamei, you do not burn it. V'lo yoid, not only do you not burn the food that a guy touched, elo shechachamim asu heker, but more than that, the chachamim, the sages, actually made a certain point. They made it so it should be recognizable. Lohidia, to inform people. Shetumas hagoy medivrei seifrim. You should know that the impurity of the goy is all rabbinic. because they want to make a point that no one should burn truma and kachim. So they went out of their way to make a point that everybody should realize that the guy is not really tamei, so that no one should come to burn truma v'kachim. And it's actually a dispute from the rabbis in the Mishnaic era as to what exactly is the heker, is this recognition that they made so people should notice. The Beis Shammai, according to Beis Shammai, what was the decree or the exception that they made, a funny rule, so to say, in order for people to realize, oh, so they're not really tamei? What did they do to make this recognition? Dama goyatar mishum heker. They said that the blood that comes as an omission, a bodily omission from a non-Jewish woman or girl, that blood is not impure. It's pure. It's clean. But on her saliva, her spit, or her urine, they did make a decree and said that it's tamei, as if it came from a person that's a zava. Because those are more common than her blood. In other words, for a person to come across or come in contact with saliva or urine of a non-Jewish woman would be more common than coming across or finding her blood. So therefore, they said that's more common. So let's just consider that to be impure, as if it came from a person who is a zava. But by the blood, let's not make that decree. Why? Why exclude it? May as well, because they want people to realize that they're not really tamei, so that you don't come to burn the kachim food. Ula Beis Hillel, but Beis Hillel disagrees, and they say dama keroiko meimi raglel, that the blood is the same status as the saliva and the urine, no difference. It's all tamei. Ella, just shemishum heker amru, but in order to make this distinction, so we should know that they're not really impure, and we won't come to burn the truma and kachim that they touch. So what's the heker? Amru, the sages said, shedama mitame lach v'lo yovesh, that the blood only can contaminate, can make a person impure if it's still moist, but not if it's dry. If it's totally dry, then they said no. So Beis Hillel is saying it's not such a big difference that they made. It's not saying that the saliva and urine is, and all in any blood is not. That's Beis Shammai. But Beis Hillel says no, it depends on the type of blood. If it's still moist, then it's just like the saliva and the urine. But if it's dry, then it won't make tamei. The kol shekin shlei gazru al kismeihen, how much more so that they surely did not make a decree on a stain, a blood stain of theirs that was found. That for sure does not make one impure. Halacha ke Beis Hillel, and the halacha is in fact like Beis Hillel, that it's not that all blood, fresh blood of a non-Jewish woman or girl is considered impure, but it's only if it's dry or stained. Zoivoi tamei. Now, the zoiv, that type of abnormal seminal emission, is impure. Hafilu Beis Shammai, even according to Beis Shammai, because there is clearly a distinction. So we're not going to make this mistake, because when it comes to the male non-Jew, so his regular semen is pure. Kiryoy tahar afilu Beis Hillel. So therefore, if he had a regular seminal omission, even according to Beis Hillel, he's pure. They made no decree there, mishum heker, And the reason why we didn't decree is because we want to make a clear distinction, and people should realize that it's only rabbinically impure, this person. And therefore we won't come to burn the Truma and Kachim. Shakul Yedim, because everyone knows, that if they were truly, biblically speaking, in a state of tumah of zivus, so we would know, everybody knows, that his semen would be considered a certain level of impurity, just like the semen of one who is a zav. Now they decreed the impure state of a non-Jew's ziva emission more so than a shichvas zera, than his regular seminal emission. Because to be a zoiv is not dependent on anything he does. It's just an abnormal discharge. But his normal seminal emission is dependent on his actions. So therefore there's a clear distinction. But Yerushalmi Omru, in the Talmud Yerushalmi, they said, Sheshichvas zare shel goy, that the semen of a non-Jew, umeimei raglov, and his urine, gazra aleim bishmeina asadavar. That is something that they did decree in those 18 things that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel decreed. And they made him tamei. Because physically speaking, it is impossible for semen to come out of the body without any urine. Halacha shlegazra shichvas arei. The halacha is that they did not decree on his seminal omission. That does not make him tamei. Nimtzei salamed. So it comes out that you learn as follows. In conclusion, shezoivoi shel goy, that this abnormal omission of the non-Jew called zoiv, v'dam nida oidam ziva, and then the blood of a woman, either the nida type of blood or the ziva type of blood, whatever blood, whether it's the regular menstrual blood or whatever, v'leida shel baskoi, and a woman who gave birth, a non-Jewish woman who gave birth, uvas goy v'goy atzmam, and the non-Jew themselves. Even though they are biblically clean from blood of zav. And the saliva of non-Jews and their urine, or anything that they sit on or ride on, because by Jews, a person who's impure who sits on something, that he makes that impure. Mm-hmm. Or boil goya, or if a Jewish man had relations with a non-Jewish woman. Kol echad me'elu ava tumah midivrei seifrim. Every one of these people in this list, even though biblically they are pure. Every one of them, though, rabbinically speaking, because of the decree, is impure in the level called av hatuma. V'chulam mitamim adam v'kelim, and every one of them can now defile a person or vessels, b'maga, by touching them, umitamim adam b'masa, and they can defile a person by carrying, kezav l'chol davar, just like a regular zav. The only difference is this state of impurity which they can transmit to someone else or to something else. The same rules apply, just like a Jew who's really a zav. Same thing applies, except for it's all biblical, it's all rabbinic. So there's all sorts of rules of how a Jew transmits tumah. If a Jew is in a certain state of tumah and then he touched another person or he touched something, does it transmit it? All those rules apply, but it's all rabbinic. On that note, Yesh shekasvu. There are those that wrote that the rule as follows. That it's forbidden to bathe with the non-Jew in a bathhouse. Which would be interesting, because that would also mean probably can't go swimming in the same pool. But that a Jew cannot bathe in the bathhouse with the non-Jew. The yesh shemefarshim tamad davar, and there are those which explain why is that so. What's the reason? Mipnei, because shegazur aleim liyes kazavim, because we just got through saying that the rabbis made a decree that all goyim are considered like this impurity of a zav. And there are those chachamim, those sages that were careful. Some were so careful that because of this decree that we spoke about, and we said that their saliva and their urine is more common to be found, whatever, than, let's say, their blood. So therefore, there were those sages that if they came in contact with the saliva of a non-Jew, if let's say the non-Jew spat or something came out and it touched them, they would go immerse in a mikvah. Even though biblically the non-Jew saliva doesn't affect him, but because they're considered like a zav, and if a zav's saliva comes to someone, it made them impure. And then there are those which explain the reason for the prohibition against bathing with them, not because they're considered like zavim, mishum hirhur, because of inappropriate thoughts. Because we're afraid that in other words, since they're not circumcised, so for a Jew to see that organ like that can more likely cause him to have inappropriate thoughts than a Jew who's accustomed to being circumcised and seeing people that are circumcised. So some say that's the reason why they can't bathe together. And therefore, according to that reason, the latter reason, it only applies in a place where they bathe without any type of pants or trunks or something covering them. But if, let's say, they're wearing a bathing suit, then the whole reason, then this last reason wouldn't apply, and that would be a difference between whether they can go swimming together or not. According to the first reason, can't go swimming together, even though everyone's wearing a bathing suit. And according to the second reason, no, it's not because they're a zav and you're afraid you're going to touch them or their saliva or what have you. It's only because we're afraid that you're going to see and then have inappropriate thoughts. Well, if they're wearing a bathing suit, no problem. Nowadays, we, the Jews, are not particular. We're not careful about this. And this whole thing of not bathing together with a non-Jew is only out of piety. It's only an extra measure of care, but it's not really according to the letter of the law. Certainly, according to the first reason, that it's because they're all considered to be in a state of this impurity of a zav. Nowadays, where we don't have the temple, none of these laws of purity and impurity apply, even within the Jewish world. So there's no such thing as a zav nowadays. So if by a Jew there's no such thing as a zav, and there's no such thing as burning, kachim, and all that, the whole thing doesn't apply. So therefore, certainly a guy who's only rabbinically speaking in a state of zav, there would be no problem. So according to the first reason, now that there is no temple, for sure a Jew can bathe together with non-Jews. And according to the second reason, it's only midas chasidus, an extra measure of care, but therefore people are not cautious. And therefore, bottom line, Jews are permitted to go swimming or to go in a public bathhouse or what have you with non-Jews. Now, if they go naked, like let's say in the shower room, if there's one big public shower room and there's not separate showers, but it's just a bunch of shower heads in one big room, and people bathe with completely naked, so then it's still not forbidden for a Jew to do that, to go there. But if he wants to be extra careful because of what we call midas chasidus, this extra measure of piety, then he could be strict. But in general, the custom is that it's done. Meis goy einu mitame ba'oyel. A dead goy, the corpse of a non-Jew, does not make a Jew impure by the tumah of oil, by being under the same cover as he is, by being in the same room. That way of transmitting impurity only applies if it's a Jewish body. Shenemar, because when the Torah speaks about the dead body making those that come under the same covering as it becoming impure, the verse states, Adam ki yamus ba'ohel, man that dies in a tent. And as we said before, the non-Jewish nations of the world are not called Adam, they're called Ha-Adam, the man. And there are those that wrote a different reason why a non-Jewish corpse does not make a Jew tamei by being in the same under the same covering. Because when it comes to the war against the Midianites, so when the soldiers came back from war, so they were told that anybody that touched a dead body of the enemy becomes defiled. It only spoke about touching. It didn't say about being under the same covering. And this is something which is part of the oral tradition. There are those that wrote that actually the rabbis are in disagreement. That they hold, some of the sages, that a non-Jewish body does defile under this by the transmitting it through oil, through being under the same covering, the same roof. And therefore, therefore non-Jewish residents, dwellings, non-Jewish homes, are considered tamei, because they would bury their miscarriages in their homes. It was a common thing that if there was a miscarriage, instead of going to a cemetery and burying it, after all, it wasn't really a live person, it was a miscarriage. So what do you do with that? So since they just, bury it wherever, in their homes even, so therefore we're afraid that maybe there was a miscarried fetus that's there, and that would make the Jew impure. And in fact, this is the way that the halacha is this the final ruling, the verdict. And therefore, practical thing even nowadays, koyanim, Jewish koyanim, priests, Jewish, nowadays are not allowed to become tummy for mace, even though we say that everybody today is in a state of tumah, because in one point or another everybody came in contact with, if not the dead body himself, but someone who did. Nonetheless, a kohen has a special prohibition that he cannot become defiled, even though he's already defiled. He can't become again defiled. So a kohen, for example, cannot go into a cemetery. A Jewish cemetery, for sure not. He can't be in the same room or building, if the doors can open and all that, as a non-Jewish corpse. But the Kohanim should also be careful not to become tamei of oil by goyim, by non-Jews. So therefore, any type of a cemetery, Kohanim have to avoid. And on a practical level, this could apply, for example, let's say there's a non-Jewish cemetery, and there's a big tree, and part of the tree is hanging over some graves, and part of it is hanging over the sidewalk. A kohen is not supposed to walk on that sidewalk because it's tumas oyel and it's goyim, and some say that it can still be transmitted that way. It could even be in a car. Now, if he closes the windows, that's fine, because then the tumah won't get in, because they don't have that opening. So if all the windows are shut and he's driving through it, he can even drive through the cemetery as long as he doesn't open the door or the windows. Some wrote a different reason why the dwelling of a non-Jew is tamei. They say it's because of the impurity of the land of the nations of the world. It's outside of the holy land of Eretz Yisrael, of Israel. All the land has a certain type of impurity. But according to them, the tumah of oil, not the tumah of going into their house where we're afraid or whatever, but the tumah of oil, of just simply having the same awning or covering over them, nobody argues, and it's not a problem. It doesn't transmit the impurity. And this indeed is what the final halacha is. That is the ruling. And a non-Jew, a kohen is allowed to walk into a cemetery and actually step on the grave of non-Jews. No problem. Nonetheless, it's proper to be careful. So a kohen should still be careful. So really, the halacha is that if it's a non-Jewish cemetery or grave, the kohen is allowed to. That's the final ruling in halacha. But nonetheless, it's good for them to be careful not to. That's what's brought down. V'magu v'masa, by touching or by carrying. Everybody agrees that a non-Jewish body does transmit the tumah, and that is not allowed. It's only oil for a Jew to directly touch a dead body, or carry a dead body of a non-Jew. Everyone agrees that would make him tamei, and therefore kohanim for sure can't do that. Because when it comes to touching a dead body, so the Torah clearly says, or a bone of a dead body, and it doesn't say over there, Adam, to only include the Jew when it speaks about that. Or alternatively, it says there anybody who touches a dead body needs to be sprinkled with this water and the mixture of the ashes of the parah aduma. Therefore, according to all opinions, even nowadays, kohanim, the Jewish priests, are not permitted to touch or carry non-Jewish corpses. Now, one of the early codifiers, commentaries, meaning post-Talmud, but early relative to us, wrote, that according to those that hold, that the goyim do not transmit impurity in oil, that if there is a non-Jewish corpse, he does not transmit tumah just by covering or by being in the same under the same covering. So there are those that say that kohanim don't have to be concerned and they don't have to be careful not to touch them or carry them either. Because according to this opinion, anyone that does not transmit tumah by oil, by being under the same covering, the kohanim are not commanded to not become defiled from them. Kitumas nevela. For example, the tumah of a dead animal called a nevela. That does not transmit tumah through oil. Therefore, kohanim are allowed to touch it. Kohanim are not commanded not to touch a nevela, even though the nevela is tamei. A dead animal is impure, yet kohanim can touch it. Why? Because that doesn't transmit tumah through oil. And therefore, this opinion holds that since goyim don't transmit tumah through oil, according to one opinion, therefore kohanim would not be forbidden. But that's only one opinion. We don't follow that, and therefore kohanim surely are not allowed to touch or carry a dead body of a goy. Now at this point, there's one line here that says, Al din hagoy koidim matan Torah. With regards to the status of a goy prior to the giving of the Torah, ayin oid adam. So for that, you need to look up the section in this Encyclopedia Talmudit under Adam. We're doing Goy, so in an earlier volume, you have Adam. So over there, he says you have to see in order to understand the status of the Goy prior to Matan Torah. Tumah b'muvan acher, in a different sense of tumah v'taharah. Everything we spoke about now was very, very black and white of what purity and impurity is. But in a different sense, the concept of being impure, of tumah, matzinu dafkeitz l'goyim, we find specifically, more so, and specifically by the goyim. Bekelim shekana Yisrael min hagoy, shetzrichim tefillah. A Jew that bought food utensils, pots, pans, all sorts of dishes that food comes in contact with. Cutlery, plates, glasses, cups, any of that. That a Jew bought from a non-Jew. It has to be immersed in a mikvah before the Jew uses it. And that's not in order to make it kosher in the sense that the non-Jew used it for non-kosher food. Nope. It's brand new. And we even witnessed it from the very beginning. Let's say we saw the manufacturing it. We saw him take a raw piece of, I don't know what, clay or whatever, maybe metal actually. We saw him take a piece of metal, manufacture it. It was never ever used. It was never out of our sight. But because it went from the ownership of the goy to the ownership of the Jew is not allowed to use it until he immerses it in a mikvah. And the explanation given is because it went out of a state of impurity of the goy, and it came into the state of sanctity of the Jew. So now we see that the goy does have tumah. We just got through saying that biblically there's no such thing as tumah. And this mitzvah of the Jew immersing his food, dishes, and vessels in the mikvah is biblical. So we do find that in a different sense there is tumah by goyim. However, he explains here, it's not in the sense of actual tumah like we spoke about until now. The word that we're using over here for tumah is an expression. It really means it's the opposite of the sanctity and the holiness of the Jew. That's what it is, not a regular term of tumah. And therefore, therefore it's relevant nowadays as well. If it would be your classical tumah, well, we said nowadays there's no such thing. We don't deal with tumah v'taharah because we don't have a Beis HaMikdash. So then it wouldn't apply. And yet it does apply because it's not your conventional type of tumah v'taharah. It's a different type of tumah. We're using the word tumah, but it really means a spiritual type of non-holiness of the Jew. Uvakasav matzinu, and in the verse we find, Ki lo yosif yavei becha oid arel v'tamei. It says in Isaiah 52 that there won't come anymore to you the uncircumcised and the tamei, the impure. And that is not talking about someone who became defiled or impure. It means a goy. And he explains very interestingly in the extra prayer that we add on Chanukah, in the Shemona Esrei, in the Amidah, the standing silent prayer, and in the Birkas Hamazon, the grace after eating a meal of bread. So we add a paragraph thanking Hashem for the wonderful miracles of the Chanukah story. And we say over there that you gave blank in the hands of blank. And we go through a whole list of things of how the Jews were victorious and overpowered the Yevanim, the Greek Assyrians of that story. And we say, Masarta, you gave the mighty strong ones in the hands of the weak, the many in the hands of the few, the impure in the hands of the pure, the wicked in the hands of the righteous, etc. Say a whole bunch of those. Okay, mighty in the hands of the weak, yeah. They were much stronger than the Jewish army was. Many in the hands of few, yeah. Numbers, they were many, many more. Wicked in the hands of the righteous, yeah, they're wicked, they're righteous. What do you mean the impure in the hands of the pure? Who says? They were all impure? He says, yes, because that's just a term that we use for any and every guy. And therefore, that is the reason why when a Jew acquires a vessel, a food vessel, from a non-Jew, he has to toivel it in the mikveh, and that takes it out of that state of impurity and brings it into the sanctity of the Jewish people. So until next time, wishing everyone well, and make sure to keep all the 7 mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and make this world not only a better world, but the perfect world through the coming of Mashiach now.